Hello, thank you for listening. My name is Jean-Pierre Dubois, and I want to tell you a story from a time when I was just 26 years old. A lifetime ago, and yet it is as clear to me as the grain on this old workbench in front of me. Before the war, my world was simple. It was a world of order, of logic. It smelled of hot oil, metal shavings, and the sweat of honest work. I was a factory man in Lyon. I understood machines. A machine has a purpose, a design. Every gear meshes with another, every piston drives a crank, every belt turns a wheel. It is a system, and when it breaks, when a gear strips or a belt snaps, the noise is honest. It tells you exactly what is wrong. You find the fault, you replace the part, you make it whole again. I believed everything in life could be understood this way. I believed a broken country, our France, was just a complex machine that we, the workers, the people, could repair with enough courage and the right tools. The war taught me a different kind of physics. It introduced me to systems that were designed to fail, to parts that were meant to break. People ask what it was like to be in the Maquis, to fight in the shadows. They imagine grand speeches and heroic charges. But for me, on that freezing autumn night in 1942, it wasn't about the grand idea of France. It was about a broken lock, a desperate need for medicine, and the terrible, grinding sound of a perfect machine, a German trap snapping shut around us. The cold was a physical thing. It wasn't just in the air. It seeped through the thin wool of my coat, through the worn leather of my boots, and settled deep in my bones. It was a traitorous cold, the kind that made you doubt the warmth of the sun had ever existed. We moved through the back alleys of Saint-Étienne like ghosts, three of us. Me, young Jacques, who was barely 18 and trembled more from fear than the chill, and Luke. Even now, saying his name feels like pressing on an old bruise. He was a factory man, too, worked the lathe next to mine. Where I was quiet and saw the world as a set of problems to be solved, Luke saw it as a story to be told. He had a laugh that could fill a room and a belief in people that even the occupation couldn't stamp out. He smelled of cheap tobacco and an unshakable optimism that I, with my mechanic's pragmatism, could never quite understand but desperately relied on. He was the heart of our little machine. I was just the hands that tried to keep it running. The target was a small German supply depot, a converted pharmacy. Our contact, a rail worker with eyes that had seen too much, swore it was lightly guarded. More importantly, he swore it held quinine and sulfonamide powder. Gold to us. Our small group hiding in the hills was riddled with fever and infected wounds. Our fight wasn't against panzers and legions. It was against pneumonia, gangrene, and despair. This was a simple operation, a gear that needed acquiring to fix our own faltering engine. I remember the texture of the cobblestones under my knees, slick with a fine mist. The silence was the loudest thing in the world, punctuated by the distant bark of a dog and the impossibly loud sound of my own breathing. I worked on the lock of the service door, my fingers numb, the metal of my tools biting into my skin. This was my world, tumblers, pins, leverage, a small, logical problem. I could feel the faint click as the last pin gave way, a small victory, a clean solution. Luke gave my shoulder a squeeze. In the gloom, his grin was a flash of white. "See, Jean-Pierre," he whispered, his breath a small cloud in the air. "Even their German locks can't handle a Lyon worker." We slipped inside. The air was different, stale, thick with the chemical scent of disinfectant and something else, something sterile and wrong. The quiet inside was heavier, more deliberate than the quiet outside. My internal mechanic, the part of me that listens for the wrong noise in a running engine, felt a gear slip, a vibration that didn't belong. Jacques, clumsy in his fear, knocked a tin box from a shelf. The clatter was like a gunshot in the oppressive silence. We froze, our hearts hammering against our ribs. Nothing, only the echo dying in the darkness. We began to work fast, stuffing sacks with precious bottles and bandages. It felt too easy. The shelves were too orderly, the stock too plentiful. Machines, when they are about to fail catastrophically, sometimes run smoother than they ever have before. A fatal quiet before the shriek of tearing metal. Then the world ended. Floodlights outside blasted through the windows, turning the dusty interior into a stark, overexposed photograph of our own doom. They pinned us like insects to a board. The front door burst open. Black uniforms, the glint of steel helmets, Gestapo. A voice, sharp and guttural, sliced through the air. Hend hoc. Rouse, the beautiful, simple machine of our plan, was now just a pile of scrap. Chaos is not a broken machine. It is the absence of any machine at all. It is pure, unthinking energy, and it consumes everything. Gunfire erupted. Not the crack of our old levels, but the sound of an MP40. It was a ripping, tearing sound, like a giant canvas being torn in two. Plaster exploded from the walls, glass shattered. Jacques screamed, a high, thin sound that was cut short with a wet gurgle. He fell backward, a broken doll, his sack of stolen medicine spilling across the floor like useless dust. My mind, my problem-solving mind, was stripped bare. The gears were grinding, throwing off sparks but catching on nothing. Move, find cover, return fire. These were not thoughts, they were primal instructions from a deeper, simpler part of the brain. I dove behind a heavy wooden counter, the wood splintering above my head. The air was thick with cordite and the smell of ozone, a smell I will forever associate with absolute failure. Luke was beside me. His face was a pale mask in the strobing light of the muzzle flashes. His optimism was gone, burned away. In its place was something hard, something ancient. He chambered a round into his rifle, the asterisk clack-clack asterisk of the bolt, a familiar, comforting sound in the cacophony. He was looking at me, but his eyes were seeing something else. A final calculation. The alley, Jean-Pierre, he yelled over the din. The way we came in, they won't expect it. Go, warn the others. No, I said, my voice lost in the noise. Together, we go together. It was the mechanic's creed. You don't abandon a working part, you fix the whole system. He shook his head, a small, violent gesture. He pushed a spare clip of ammunition into my hand. His were rough, calloused, the hands of a man who builds things. Our machine is broken, my friend. This part is finished, but the rest must keep running. You understand machines, you know I'm right. And the terrible thing is, he was. In that moment of pure chaos, he gave me a sliver of cold, brutal logic. His life was a component to be sacrificed to save the larger apparatus. My flight was the only functioning gear left. To stay was to ensure the total destruction of the whole network. He didn't wait for my answer. He took a deep breath, the last one I would ever see him take, and then he moved. He didn't run for the exit. He ran towards the Germans, firing the old rifle from his hip, a desperate, defiant roar tearing from his throat. He was a distraction, a human shield, a final, closing parenthesis on our friendship. I ran. My body moved, but my soul remained there behind that counter. I scrambled out the back door, into the cold, cleansing darkness of the alley. The sounds of the firefight were still loud, but they were behind me now. Luke's rifle had a deeper, slower report than theirs, a single, powerful heartbeat against their frantic pulse. Crack, crack, crack. Each one was a second of life he was buying for me. Every step on those wet cobblestones was a betrayal. The rhythm of my own running feet pounded out a single, repeating accusation. You live, he dies. The logic that forced me to run was a poison in my veins. I was saving the network, yes, but I was abandoning my friend. I wasn't Jean-Pierre the man anymore. I was a function, a message carrier, a cog in a machine, running because another cog had deliberately shattered itself to clear my path. The last shot I heard from his rifle was followed by a final, prolonged burst from the MP40, and then a silence that was louder and more terrible than all the noise that had come before it. I did not look back. I just ran. I've spent the rest of my life fixing things. After the war, I opened my own small shop. Clocks, radios, small engines, anything with parts that fit together in a logical, predictable way. There is a comfort in it, a sanity. You can always find the problem. A broken wire, a stripped gear. You can make it right. But my hands, these hands that can coax life back into a dead motor, can never fix the memory of that night. Luke is a ghost in my workshop. He is the rattling sound in an engine I can never locate. He is the machine I couldn't repair, the debt I can never repay. I did what I had to do. The network survived. We saved lives with the information I carried. It was the logical choice. The correct move, but I have never again believed that everything can be fixed. Some things, some people, some moments, they break in a way that leaves no pieces to put back together. You can only stand in the silence that follows and remember the machine as it was supposed to be. The hardest lesson from that war, from that alley, is this. In a moment of true, honest chaos, you are rarely given a choice between right and wrong. You are given a choice between two different kinds of broken. Luke chose a quick, violent end. I was forced to choose a long, quiet one. You spend the rest of your life learning to live with the parts you were left holding. This memory is a piece of shrapnel I carry. It's heavy. Help me carry it. Subscribe and ensure these stories are never left to rust in silence.